went fishing. Went fishing. Went fishing, started out with my father, and then got into my own outfit. Started at Basin Head. I go back as far as the harbour being built there, I would, my parents lived over there in the summertime. Well, they were building the harbour. My mother ran the cookhouse during that time. But I remember that. But then after the harbour was built, when there was a lot of boats and a lot of people, and I remember the factory being there, but I was only a young fella, and at that time, I be just a little squirt helpers around the wharf and saving sounds and drying them, and that's where I got my first bicycle. I was independent at the age of 11 or 12. I got enough sounds to buy my own bicycle. That's how easy it was for a young fellow then, really, to pick up something. But I loved the water, and I loved going out with my father, and I spent in my younger years in the boat with him, half the time in the back end of it asleep, but I was there. Actually, there was no name on those little boats at that time that I recall, some of the boats we just built locally. I think one of the last ones I remember they had built that new was Reggie Rose from South Lake. And only that would be just a homemade names that wouldn't even be registered, them boats, there wouldn't be a registered name on them. But you get all kinds of names for them, all depending on the day. You'd have all kinds of names for a lot of those little boats. Some was death traps and some was great boats. And the first one that I was in with my father was a 4 horsepower. And then graduated from there to a 5. And all the time he fished at Basin Head, he fished with a 5. But when I started on my own, it would be, I'd have to go back to the time when the draggers came to Surrey first, the first Surrey second, and I was a little young fellow around. I was getting older then. I was about, I'd say 14, 15. I was around the wharf, of course, dressing fish. I might have been out fishing my father at them times, but at that time, the first dragger that come, the Surrey second, was what the government was trying to do at that time. I remember Francis Camel from down the road there. He worked for the Fisherman Loan Board. They were trying to get those boats. And the reason they arrived along the Basin Head, they were trying to introduce a local fisherman to go on trips, to get them interested in dragging. Well, the older people was set in their ways and making a good, they fished the way they always fished, and there was none of them interested in going. So I went as a crew member on the first dragger in Surrey. I would say I was 14, possibly 15 or 16. I'm not sure. I would know if I knew the exact date that first Surrey second was here. I'm presuming it was 51, 1951. Or 50, could be 49 or 50. I ended up a regular on that in the summertime, on that, In 52, there's a whole bunch of us around here, all the boys that would be grading potatoes in the winter time or working the woods around here in the winter time. And it was the first start of unemployment when there was actually practically nothing. You grade potatoes all day for $1, $1.50. But we all went to Maine in the woods. I think there's 18 of us. And that would be in 1952, in the fall. I'm home for Christmas, and I went back, and one of my friends, Johnny McKee, a local fellow from Little Pond, he married a local girl up here, Bertie McKee. And him and I was good friends, and he loves to fish there a fortune. I knew this in the fall, and I bought 100 traps on him, off him. And when I was home that winter, my father, I got in contact with my father, and of course I was living at home, but he helped me secure a boat, and we got Irving Baker to put a Model A engine. That's the first gas engine that we had, although some of the Lapeers had gas engines in the boat at the basin before that. So that, in 1953, I was on my own. I fished my 125 traps, I think it was, at Red Point Rock. And then in 53, Yeah, 52 or 53. Then I went to North Lake. I fished from there on.
So you fished, your father fished at Basin Head. What type of species did he
Cod,
go?
hake.
Did he fish lobster?
He did. After I started the lake and after the Basin Head dried up, when the draggers dried up the place, he moved to North Lake and got into the lobster fishery too, with his own boat.
Were there many lobster offshore at Basin Head during this time?
We wouldn't know at that time because at them time the boats just fished along the shore, you know, a mile and a half, 2 miles be outside ground.
Okay.
You know. But as I used to come back to Basin Head in the summertime with my lobster boat, and I used to ground fish there. But we used to, excuse me, we used to ground fish offshore with a little rock they call Charlotte. And there was lobsters there at times, certain times, and today, yes, some of the Fortune boats and Surrey boats go up to that little rock out there.
Who would work with your father? Who would be his cork besides yourself?
When he was at Basin Head,
Yeah.
Sterling Robertson used to fish with him. My father always had a tender back, a sore back, you know, and then he was a top-notch fisherman, and he liked to be top-notch boat or high boat if he could, and then he hired Sterling, I think, and then Fred Dixon, my uncle, my mother's brother, he fished with my father. I'm not sure what years, but long before I was only a squirt, but he fished with my father before the harbour, off the beach. They built a little wharf,
Yeah.
private little wharf to my father, and I forget who all was there, you know, Jimmy and
Jimmy Robertson.
yeah, Wilbur Jervis, and a place to tie up. And then one year there was lots of fish, and they had another fish buyer in from Gasbro, I think it was, and they used to take the fish across there, and the buyer would truck them up from there. But that's at the time when there was fish at the basin, you know, and there was a lot of boats. That's before the draggers, I guess.
So Lester fished from there too.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was Lester, Jimmy. Did John fish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not at that. Not after the harbour. He used to fish there on the shore, and probably the first going off of the harbour. But Jimmy fished after the harbour was there, and Lester, I remember him fishing. He was the only one that had a twin-engine double cylinder, we call it. You could hear it all over the country in the morning. But,
Yeah. I remember seeing photographs of the shoreline before the wharf and everything was built back in the late 20s, early 30s, and there were a lot of bait sheds. Were those privately owned?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. So the government had little to do with the fishing there. It was basically owner-driven.
Yeah. The government had no finger in the pie then whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know that. Until the harbour was built, and then there was
In your time, did anybody fish with dories, or was it basically motor-driven?
the fish in dories, but I just wouldn't. I was too young for that. I was actually I never was out with my father when he fished on the beach. I would just be around there.
Yes.
But I started going out with him in I think it would be the 40s when the harbour was built, something like that.